Welcome to heCast, the official podcast of HeChangedIt. As always, I am Mike Chisholm. As always, I am excited to be here, and I say that with little to no hyperbole whatsoever. I love doing this. It's my favorite time of the week. I enjoy talking to guests, picking their brain, all in the realm of men's mental performance, mental wellness, all of that stuff. If you haven't subscribed to heCast yet, what the heck are you waiting for? Please hit that subscribe button. It makes a difference on our metrics. We need people to subscribe. It's okay that it's in your history. That's amazing. But if you could actually subscribe, that would be great. If you could share, that would be even better. We would appreciate that so much. For any man listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, if you haven't downloaded the HeChangedIt app, download it. Is it in its beta form? Yes, it is. Does it still have value already? Yes, it does. There's lots of cool things happening in this movement that we call HeChangedIt, and we are so excited for the future. I mean, my gosh, I've seen the roadmap as to what is going to be in this app. Unbelievable things coming. Please download the app. Please sign up and become part of this HeChangedIt movement. Hey, let's change the world. Hey, let's make the world a better place for men. Because if we make the world a better place for men, guess what? Everyone else is going to benefit too. You know, them women and them kids, they're going to benefit too. I talk about how excited I am when I do these podcasts. Again, not even a little bit of that is exaggeration. I love talking to people about the topics of the day pertaining to where men are at. Today is absolutely no exception to that. Today, we have a guest named Davis Wiggs on our podcast. He is a counselor. He is a counselor that I met during an exploratory, I don't even know what you want to call it, a committee. There was a group of us that all got together, and we were working with the Canadian Mental Health Association as they were building and are building the very first course that is going to be uploaded into the HeChangedIt network. It is going to be a men's communication course. Very, very exciting. I've seen the blueprint of this thing. It's going to be very cool. And Davis was actually part of that same group, and we were brainstorming and we were going through all of the things that we would love to see in this course, and we had all sorts of perspectives, and immediately I zoned in as we were all in that Zoom grid of faces all looking at each other and talking and having that electronic synergy. I immediately zeroed in on Davis because his vantage point, he's got a brain that I want to pick. He's a counselor. He's a counselor that's about 20 years younger than I am, which puts him into a different generation. I'm always curious about the generation gap, and it's fascinating to see that as we grow. And not only that, he is a counselor that has a specific point of view that is very I just, you know what, we're going to get to it as I introduce him. But needless to say, I'm super, super excited for this. Davis Wiggs, thank you so much for agreeing to take time out of your very busy schedule and be part of heCast today.
Thank you.
I'm excited to have you here,
actually.
man.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited.
So at the time of this broadcast, this is your first podcast.
Oh, it's my first podcast. So a little bit of the nerves there. So.
Oh, no. They're going to be gone in a second. And I know they're going to be gone in a second because you and I have a wonderful, very easy conversation space. And I love that. I love when I'm able to have that easy conversation space with people in their 20s. I'm a guy who's in my mid 40s now. And I find that even though Gen X was a generation where we prided ourselves in acceptance. We prided ourselves in being different from those baby boomer dinosaurs that raised us and having a different type of culture. Yeah. The generation gap's a real thing. And even though we thought we were so enlightened, I look at the way that I just naturally speak sometimes and some of these inclinations that I have, and folks in their 20s who I have this dynamic with are able to say, okay, Mike, shouldn't maybe say that if you don't want to offend people.
Right. And
it doesn't even occur to me. So I really appreciate it when I can sit with somebody and talk with somebody and we have that dynamic. Yeah. You're a counselor, and you view your counseling profession as way more than a profession. This is something that at this phase of your life, safe to say, you were born to do this. You were meant to do this.
Yeah, it was something that I didn't initially think I was, good at. It was definitely something that I didn't really think I was going to be doing. I never really had those aspirations and like dreams. It was just more of like things just kind of came and flow. And like, it was just, I was there for people and I listened. And as soon as it came to university, I was at that point where I was like, yeah, I want to be a counselor.
So you were that friend in high school. If you went to high school with Davis, you were the guy that if somebody was going through something, you were really good at listening.
Oh, I was very good at listening. I was good at listening more than I was just talking, just because I think that a lot of the stuff that I listened to was just a lot of the, the high school drama and like all that stuff. But it was, I think in the long run, I think it was more than that, because I've made connections with people that, I have been friends with in high school, like for the past 5-10 years. And so like, they know that I am there for them, and they know that, it's like you were, I've got comments on Facebook of like, you were there for me, and, I didn't I didn't say anything, and I want to give you credit now for helping me, with this and this and such. It's crazy to see that like I'm friends with a lot of these people now.
So, being a counselor, would you say the number one skill that you need to be an effective counselor is listening?
Yes, I think so. I think it's innate in a way, but at the same time, when you do go to school, for example, it's definitely something that you learn. Yeah. But then you learn that you're, obviously either good at it or not good at it. So it's definitely something that I wanted to go to school for, because I knew that I could be like, yeah, I can do well in these courses because I know what it takes.
You say to be a good listener or not a good listener. Mm-hmm. What's the definition of not a good listener? What are some attributes of somebody who isn't good at it?
That's a good question, because I've never been asked that question before. Being a good listener, for example, is somebody who takes the time to just sit there and be present with the person, mm-hmm. and being able to acknowledge what that person is talking about. If it might be how their day is going, it might be, I'm doing the dishes and this is what happened, or whatever it might be. And not a good listener is, somebody who, might not be good at it as other people, but have more of they talk more than they listen. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I have never been really good at, is a lot of that talking aspect. I've been more just like the target, I guess.
I think a lot of men are feeling that these days a little bit. There's even short-term derogatory terms. You think about the term mansplaining. Yeah. Maybe somebody who hears somebody going through something and they immediately kind of jump in and try and fix the problem, or it might not even be from a nefarious place. It's just a place of not being present, immediately being in a place where they're waiting to speak.
Well, exactly.
Rather than being kind of excited to listen. There's philosophies out there that talk about 2 ears, one mouth, or be quick to listen, slow to speak. And in counseling, obviously, that is a massive advantage if you can be good at that.
Well, and there's that communication aspect, right? Like, it's definitely something that we're, that's a learning experience in itself, is that communication piece. I think even if it's in relationships, if it's, if you're out on a day-to-day basis with people that, that you might come across with that you don't know, or that you've known for a really long time. And, it's definitely something that can still be, I think communication is something that kind of takes on its form like 10, 20 years forward.
It becomes it is a skill like that. And it can be a journey to become a better communicator. I think a big part of it is mindfulness. Yeah. Many people just they're just running on autopilot, and they're just acting, they're surfing their id almost a little bit, where they're just, whatever is there, it just comes out, and they're not necessarily even thinking about, what they're hearing or even what they're saying. It's just a lot on autopilot. Yeah. In your practice, obviously that's the exact opposite. You're good at kind of slowing things down and just saying, okay, let's get to the heart of things and let's really start dissecting things.
Yeah. And that's where a lot of the counseling comes into play, is when people are going through things like trauma or anxiety or depression or that kind of thing. And so in my practice, I tend to more listen to what they have to say. And, all counselors are different. And so that plays into mine, where I'm more of playing into that mindfulness aspect of, I do a lot of those mindfulness practices as well. Yeah. And so a lot of those mindfulness practices, like, doing like a body scan or deep breathing, that kind of thing at the beginning can, even if it's for the first time somebody's doing it, or if they've done it before, doing it in that kind of space is very it can be very vulnerable, but it's also very much a place of like, yeah, I feel safe here because I know that you're not going to tell anybody because we're in this safe space together.
Yes. And that's the thing. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you so much is because this is a safe space. You're a guy who I naturally, again, even over Zoom, when I first met you over Zoom in that course, it's like, oh, this is a guy that I naturally just feel safe talking to. I feel like I can ask you anything, and the answers that you give will have no judgment associated with them whatsoever. Have you always been that guy?
I've always been like that my whole life. I've always been very vulnerable, and I sometimes think it's good to be vulnerable, but at the same time it's not. But I take that aspect in to myself and say, like, where am I coming from? And where is that, like, how am I feeling in those moments?
Yeah.
But I take those moments and I push them out, and I'm like, I want people to know that I am an open book and you can ask me anything, because I'm not in that aspect afraid to say what is on my mind. And, you can ask me anything that you want. And so that's where that vulnerability plays into, my every like day-to-day life, and like, for example, like I'll go on, I'll go to work, and that's, I'll tell my coworkers anything because, they are a place where I can say things like that. And they know that a lot of that stuff is, not necessarily confidential. And that's,
well, some might think it is.
Well, yes,
but then at the end of the day, when you're vulnerable, it's making that choice to say, okay, I'm making this aspect not confidential in that sense. I'm willing to share this. And in that, I mean, I assume that is a huge, huge part of building trust. I mean, if you've got a client sitting in front of you who is attaching themselves to that stigma of counseling, I want to talk about that, where they're afraid. They're maybe not sure why they're there. Maybe they're there because other people have told them to be there. There a whole plethora of what ifs could be sitting there. You being willing to let it be a give and take, where you actually are able to be that vulnerable and open up that much of yourself, that must go a long way into building trust with people. Yeah.
And I've learned that, like, I've just finished my internship and I'm almost like there to like be a registered counselor. So I'm just like itching to just like get into the meat of things and, to do my own practice like in the future. And so that's something that I want to be able to do, is provide that space for people who are going through those things. And, like you said, like they might not have anything to talk about and like, I don't know why I'm here. And, and then you just ask the question, what are you doing here? What has brought you here? And so then, and then that kind of, they might not talk. We can just sit there for 45 minutes to an hour and just like, be silent. And then that's our session. But like, it's that connection. And I think that even if you are quiet for that whole time that we're sitting there, that's something that's power in itself.
Yeah. Where do you practice right now?
I practice at the district here in Kelowna.
Okay.
It's called William & Associates Counseling Services.
Yep.
So they provide counseling to people who are going through addictions and trauma, mostly trauma. But a lot of the interns that work there are going through things like they work with people who are going through like anxiety and depression. So that's kind of their main aspect there.
And the majority of your clients are men.
The majority of them are, yes.
So let me throw this curveball at you. Is there a number one? If there was one thing that you are seeing, a trend, something that it just, I see this more than anything else, what would that be?
Oh yeah, that's a big question. A lot of the clients that I do see are more like probably middle-aged men, probably between like 30 and 50 or
guys
60.
My age.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you'll have a lot of work there. You picked the right course. There's a lot of work with my generation.
Well, and with that generation comes a lot of anxiety and depression and like their childhood and like, the way they've grown up, and, their parents might have something that, that they didn't have, like they don't have now. So like there's some people who don't have a relationship with their family, or there's some people who are just disconnected from everybody and just, want to be themselves, but their family's putting them too much pressure on them to be somebody that they're not. And so a lot of the stuff that I see is from that generation is that men aren't afraid, there's that myth that men should keep their emotions in and shouldn't shed their emotions.
Yes.
And so I get a lot of men who are saying things like, for example, I don't cry because my dad would, in retrospect, be abusive in that sense. And and that's something that really touches me because it's something that I never grew up with and I never had to go through. And so then to hear that is like, wow, let's talk about that.
Well, and I mean, you use the word abuse and you did it really carefully. And I appreciate you doing that. I want to explore that a little bit because at the end of the day, the definition of abuse has been a moving set of goalposts. Really, what was considered abuse, what's considered abuse now, 20 years ago was commonplace. And that statement can probably be said for every 20-year period for the last
100%
X amount of time. So really, we're really honing in on what things like abuse or childhood trauma, things like that. Yeah. You got a child who had or an adult who had a perfectly normal childhood, without any, they were never beaten, they were never whatever. But at the end of the day, it could have been somebody just talking to them wrong with it. Like childhood trauma is still childhood trauma. Our brain doesn't really have the scope to define the severity of it.
Right.
Trauma is trauma. Yeah. And if we don't recognize and deal with that trauma, many times that's going to cause a block in our adult lives, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you actually hit it right on the head there. It was, trauma is something that, it's not just stress, anxiety, or depression. It's like they've gone through things where it's kind of their development of childhood has come to a stop. So they're having to protect themselves from their family who is being abusive. So they're, what do you think a regular kid does on a day-to-day basis? Go to the playground, play with your friends, hang out with them. But there's some families who don't do that because they're trying to protect themselves from whatever abuse that they're coming from in the family. Wow. And so and so that really hits home for a lot of them because I'll touch on that and it'll really touch them. And then it's really hard for them, like I said before, to shed those emotions because it's just it's very much just netted in themselves and they just don't want to talk about it. Yeah.
Unpacking that must be, every person that you do this with must be their own little unique Fabergé egg of a puzzle to try and unpack some of that stuff. Does that stuff fascinate you?
Yes, it does. Yeah. And like you said, a puzzle, that's something that I go by because it's putting that puzzle pieces together. So they're all separate on one, what do you think? It's when you lay it out all on the table, it's they're just puzzle pieces all over the table. And then what you're trying to do is just trying to figure out where those pieces fit. Yeah. And so that works within counseling is that you're trying to figure out where this piece fits and where that piece fits. And so that's something that I try to work on with my clients is to bring them in and hone in on a lot of the things that they've been going through throughout their childhood. And they try to make those connections. Right. And so then those puzzle pieces are 1, 2, and then just kind of it all fits together. And then it just all comes together, Yeah, it's hard to say. It's really hard to say with a lot of my clients that I deal with. They're all different, all unique.
That being said, just like every puzzle is unique, you get 5 different 1,000-piece puzzles in front of you with different pictures on them. Those are very unique, but there are techniques that you use. We're going to start with the corner pieces and we're going to start with the border and kind of go around that.
Yeah.
When it comes to counseling all of these different individual cases, are there things our listeners can listen to? We've got people that are listening to this that have, they know that, okay, maybe I should go to counseling, but it's so deep seated and it's just no, I'm not going to go and do that.
Yeah.
Are there frameworks of, I don't want to use the word advice. Are there frameworks of techniques or things that people can do to be mindful and to think about some of these things that that are consistent through all of these different pictures that you see?
Yeah. I mean, that's quite the question in itself too.
Sure.
When they're seeking this, help from themselves, or they're wanting to seek help for themselves.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It is. It's just where to start. And a lot of that starting position is knowing that, that you have people around you who are, that are wanting to get help for you, or that, they're at a point where like, I can't help you anymore. So like, I'm going to push you onto, somebody else. Right. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a frustrating thing.
It is. Yeah. It's very frustrating.
Without, obviously breaking any confidences or anything like that, if you had are they called breakthroughs? Like you think about people have breakthroughs or something. They have a defining moment where suddenly they went from here and they went to there.
Yeah.
Without using any names or anything like that, is there one specific that you could think of as I say that has been a highlight for you in your career so far?
Yeah. I actually had a conversation with the counselors that actually had a conversation with my supervisor throughout my internship about these kinds of things, and like about the clients that I'm talking about. He actually asked that same question. And I have one client in particular that I saw who was I did like 10, 11 sessions with them. And they were very much at a place where the trauma got to a point where, like in our first session, it was like he had never talked about it to anybody before.
Right.
And so like he'd never talked to his family. He'd never talked to, his family, his friends. And it was just all packed in because he didn't think he could talk about that kind of stuff. And so when it came to like our sixth session, I revisited a lot of those stuff that we had talked about in our goals and what he had learned and everything. And he goes,
had he opened up by this point about any of this stuff to you, or did it all come flooding out at that point?
No. So it all came flooding out at at this sixth session. So like a lot of the stuff that we were talking about, like he was very quiet. Like a lot of my sessions are just an hour, right? There's just an hour for them to talk about what they've been going through. And I do a lot of these therapeutic techniques that get them to kind of talk about, their family, and get them to open up about their, what kind of anxiety they have or whatever they're dealing with. But
you do that before the sixth session. Like you've gone through 6 hours or 6 45-minute sessions with this person.
Yes.
And gone through some of this stuff. And then suddenly an hour 6, session 6.
Yes.
That is when the truth starts to come out.
Well, yeah. And so what I do with a lot of my clients is I give them I wouldn't say homework, but I give them like, I guess, a challenge for like the next week before our next session. So a lot of that stuff, if, for example, they haven't talked to any of their family members about any of the trauma that he has been going through, then I suggest to them to take that next step and talk to your older sister about, or younger brother, or whoever is in your family about what they experienced.
Right.
And so I take them to that next step. And
so it's getting it out, but then applying a piece of an action, applying an action to that as to how to kind of repair that or to let it go.
Well, exactly. Right. And so they have a hard time letting it go because of a lot of that initial like rapport that I have with my clients.
Yeah.
So like, that first session is always like, we're complete strangers.
Yep.
So like, I'm, like it would be like like from you and I, but like, we have that connection now, and so, but that initial connection is always I always tell them it's like, it's very awkward because it's like, you're just, you're talking to a stranger for an hour in your first session. Right. And then, but when you get to the sixth session, you have talked to someone who you pretty much know their life story. Right. And so that's, that's something that, if you go on like a date, for example, you're not going to get that. Right. Like if you go on like a sixth date or wherever it might,
it's always the best face forward
exactly
at that point.
Yeah.
And so it's like that with counseling too. People put their best face forward for the first couple sessions, and then it starts to, then you start to see the realness, the authenticity start to come out a little bit, and you see the real person a little more.
Well, exactly. And so, I mean, back to your original question of like, was there somebody? And there was somebody. And so this person in particular was, because in that sixth session, they were able to like say everything that they did and everything that they learned. And then he wanted to continue counseling. So we did like 4 or 5 more sessions. And, and then he said, I think I'm going to stop counseling for now because I think I'm at a place where I'm able to go and live my life right now. I might come back later, but I need to, this is just for like more an example. This isn't specifically what they said.
I get you.
Yeah,
I want to
right?
destroy a stigma right here.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people out there that think going and, having some sort of therapy, whether it's counseling or whatever it is, where they believe that, oh, this is a trap. This is somebody who just wants to get me doing this and paying my money forever and ever and ever, and I never get any better.
Yeah.
I'm hearing it right now.
Yeah.
How jazzed were you when this guy said, okay, you know what? I think I'm good for now. And you saw that. Like, I'm feeling the energy right now. Like the pride that comes off you.
Yeah.
You want these people to not be your clients.
Yes.
Eventually.
Yeah.
You want them to get to that place where they have these breakthroughs where they don't need you anymore because they've seen light that you have helped create for them.
Well, exactly. And I mean, there's a lot of that like housekeeping stuff that obviously we have to get done with, like the confidentiality and being in that safe space and whatever it might be. And when I'm having that connection with them, it's definitely difficult at a moment where you're letting them go, and so that moment of letting them go and then like being like, wow, I'm not going to see them for, I don't know when.
Could be a year, could be whenever.
Exactly.
You never know. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a surreal feeling.
Yeah. And it's like sometimes I've had clients in particular where I've done like they've had like a breakthrough. Like I've had like one client who had like this, like could handle their anxiety because they had these coping mechanisms to take with them. Yeah. And so when they did have that, it was funny, they booked a session with me and they just wanted to sit there with me and tell them that like how much they really enjoyed the process of being able to, sit there with me and talk about what they've been going through. And they wanted to share what things they've been doing that, what their coping styles are right now and what they've been doing. And it's like, it's so exciting. And so when she left, for example, like, I mean, I say this and not just for, men and women, but I've had clients who like I've done like a happy dance, and so like it's just like that happy dance, like, being in the like I'll like close the door of the counseling office and just do this like big like oh my God, this is like I can't believe I just did that. Right.
Oh my God. You must see both ends of the spectrum. You see joy like that. And then there must be the heartbreak on the other side of things too, where people aren't, be it willing or in a place to they step up to the precipice. Mm-hmm. And they know they need to jump off and jump into that place and they're terrified. And that must be, you can tell how empathetic you are. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can feel it,
right.
Hear it in your voice. That must be really difficult when you know that just that nudge is going to help them, but they're not willing to take that step.
Yeah. And well, sometimes I want to push myself even more, right? I want to push myself to that point where I'm, like now that I'm almost a registered counselor, it's like I want to be able to help more people with a lot more things. And I'm looking for more opportunities to, do things and like experiences to better able to help my clients and better able to help those people. And I want to do that because I know that I got that when I was a kid. And I can say that I was quite privileged when I was, like looking at it now, because like I grew up in an environment where it was like very much nurturing and very much like, they took care of me and like I had that space. But there's some people who are just like, I had none of that.
Okay. Right? So I want to talk about that word right now, because this is one of those generation gap things I was talking about when I was doing the intro to this thing. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of folks in my generation who've got a problem with that word privilege and how the word has come to the forefront, what it means in our culture. A lot of misconceptions about what it means. They feel like it's an attack if they're told that they're privileged, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It rolls off your tongue like it's nothing.
Right.
When you say that I was privileged, what does that mean? What does that mean to you to say that I was looking back on things, I was actually very privileged?
Privilege to me means that I got I guess with my parents, I got like I said, I was very nurtured, meaning that I got clothes. Like I was the only child for like 8.5 years. And I was very much just that person who everyone was just like, oh my God, like I want to get you this and this and this. Mm-hmm. And I want to help you. And I want to like, they love me and like, I want to do that. And so it's very much that like fine line between what is privilege and what is not. Mm-hmm. So like, I think that not being privileged is being in those environments where like you don't have like any of that stuff. Yeah. But that could mean something to somebody else, right? They could be like the happiest person, like they could be the happiest people on earth, have everything, and that's their form of privilege, is that like I have what I need already.
I think that's the thing that again, you see the goalpost move. I use that analogy a lot.
Yeah.
I think that because it is a subjective thing.
Yeah.
Comparing one to another. Well, it depends what you're comparing and how you're comparing. And then you can compare it to this one over here. I mean, at the end of the day, there's so much. But I think really what it comes down to, the way that I've kind of wrestled with it and justified it in my head, it's just, again, being mindful.
Yeah.
Recognizing things that you had or have that others may not have even had that opportunity to do. I think about it as, my parents could never afford to put me into hockey growing up. And I worship hockey. I love hockey so much. And it was like when I was a little kid, grade 3, grade 4, and I would see my friends going and playing hockey.
Yeah.
Like I never had the privilege of being able to play hockey. It doesn't change anything as to who I am right now. My dad should never take that as an attack,
right,
if I use that word. But I think that so many people, because of the lack of mindfulness when it comes to that, I think they're afraid of that word sometimes.
Yeah, and it's like you were saying, it's like I wasn't put into any sports during like my time as a child. So like that to me was like I got to see people like do it, like my friends, and I'd look at them and be like, why aren't I doing that? Like why? Yeah. Like what's stopping me from going to do that? But there was also that aspect of you have the. Like I lived on an island for like, almost 10 years.
What island did you live on?
I lived on Pender Island, BC. So
wow. So just off the coast of Vancouver.
Yes. Yeah. So I lived there for like 10 years. And so that for me was like, it was nice to be able to grow up there because I knew that I was safe and my mom and my dad knew that I was safe. And so I was able to be there with my with my sibling who's about 9 years younger than I am. Mm-hmm. But, and so like being able to grow up on that island was like very safe. But at the same time, I also didn't have that privilege of being able to play those sports, right? Because I lived on such a small.
You lived on a fucking island.
Well, exactly, right? Yeah, and like
logistically, it made it real tough.
Well, yeah, and I mean, there was like less than there's like 2,000 people on that island, so like it was like very much like it's very spread out, and it's like I really wanted to play those sports, and I was like, I'm a sports guy now, and like I've talked to my mom like, why didn't I play sports? Blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. Like, but it was more just like me not having that chance because I lived on an island and I had to go to another island to play sports. And so that would like be something that my mom and my dad would have to, coordinate, and like they just didn't want to do it because they were so busy. And so like it played more into their lives than it did mine at the time. Yeah. So that's kind of where I see that. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about, and I mean, I don't want to butcher things and come across completely politically incorrect, but if I do, I'm in a safe place to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say online is a safe place to do that because, that's where you get butchered. But you know what? I'm going to use you as my shield a little bit when it comes to this. I mean, when it comes to Gen X, I look at, and I'm not telling any tales out of school. I look at when my brother came out in the 90s. Versus when somebody comes out now, and I see the world being a very different place, and for the better, by the way. When my brother came out, it was a really contentious time where you didn't know, even to the point of my parents, how that was going to go over. Yeah. Thank God it went over really, really well. And my dad, who was blue collar, kind of busted the stereotype in half and said, no, I love you no matter what. When we lived in a time where it was like, it was kind of 50-50 that was going to happen, especially with dad. Is it still that way?
Honestly, I think it is.
It is.
And it's like growing up in, like, for example, growing up in the Gulf Islands, I was very much like a sheltered person in that sense where like I didn't have that aspect of, like that community and I think it's still that way just because like being here in Kelowna, for example, I think we're living in a place where it's very much a conservative environment. Yeah. And so we're living in a place where people are just so like, if I were to say like, if I'm, if I go up to someone and I'm like, oh, I'm gay and I'm not going to say that obviously like in the first interaction, but but that's something that, if they suspect or look at you in a different way, then they're just like, they just don't want to have anything to do with you.
See, and that when I walk down the street, that is not something that I am even used to. They talk about privilege. Like I've never really experienced, unless I'm in a real stranger in a strange land, like if I'm on the other side of the world in Thailand or something like that. Okay. Yeah. I've never experienced walking down the street and maybe a couple words out and then seeing someone's demeanor change the way that you just described that.
Yeah.
You want to talk about privilege? I've never experienced that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I want to give food for thought because at the end of the day, we're all, on this earth a very, very short period of time. And I mean, I'm a peace and love guy when it comes to that. That's just not something that I think many people who have never experienced that have even considered.
Right.
What you just said was really powerful.
Yeah.
And you're in your mid-20s right now.
Yeah.
And in 2021 at the time of this broadcast, and you're still feeling that.
Yeah. And I'm still feeling it because I'm actually part of the LGBTQ community. And so being part of that community has been quite, I guess, life-changing for me. I've been out for about 5-6 years now.
Yeah.
And so that for me has been there's been a lot of ups and downs in terms of, what people think of me now and how I'm with my partner and everything. And, it's like walking down the street and holding his hand, like in Kelowna, just walking down the street. We get looks constantly. And so we get that look of, is it disapproval? Is it oh, we've never seen, gay
is it
couple
bewilderment? Is it?
Well, exactly. We've never seen a gay couple walking down the street,
right.
That's something that is kind of really weird for people is just to see oh my God, what are they doing? They're holding hands. They're two guys, we still get that.
Yeah.
Right. And that's part of that generation as well, is that part of your generation is knowing that it's there's that stigma that it's a man and a woman and,
right.
and that could be religious, that could be not, but that's kind of that generation piece as well. When you start to think about that now.
Is that is this aspect that you're talking about of life, is it an aspect to your counseling? And I guess the other question is, has it helped, despite whoever your client might be going through this? Has it given you an extra dimension of awareness that maybe I might not even have because I've never felt that? I hate to use the word judgment, but that feeling that you're talking about, whether it is bewilderment, whether it is judgment, whether it is whatever that is, I've never really felt that before. Do you think that having that awareness is another sense? It's another gear that you have that others just might not even know exists?
Yeah. And I think I honestly think that I have that awareness of what that, like you said, that judgment. And I don't like to use that word either because it can come across to people very, very,
it's a loaded word.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's
a
loaded word.
Negative connotation, to it. So, but yeah,
that word can be a trigger word. Just that word can trigger people.
Oh yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I always coming back to that judgment piece, it's saying that I feel when I'm talking to clients, for example, if they have within relationships and everything, saying that, asking questions why during a conversation can come across as judgment towards other people. So why are you doing this to me? Or why are you talking to me like this?
Yeah.
And so that there's that immediate, oh, I'm on the, I'm being attacked and they're judging me. Why are they're judging my character? I need to say something back immediately to protect myself. So,
and that's a trippy high wire act, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily intend that. I go into that all the time. It's funny in our pre-interview upstairs, I even said to you, here's a word that is so commonplace in my generation as we were growing up, is that person flaming. Yeah. I said, is that, and that is a description word of a certain behavior of a certain person.
Yeah. Shorthand.
That's in my vernacular, burned in just as something that you would say, not even a little bit intended to be offensive, right. But to the right or wrong audience, I guess you'd say that. I say that word and they're immediately triggered and they're immediately offended, which would never in a million years be my intention. Mm-hmm. And I just see that happening. I feel like we're birthing something as a culture right now in North America, where we're all trying to figure out, even in the LGBTQ community, I see divisions. Yeah. Where certain people will say, yes, this is okay. Certain people will say, no, this is not okay. Yeah. And and I see that I see that all over the place, this fragmentation, when at the end of the day, the solution just needs to be that mindfulness and that, okay, like I would love to be given the ability to know if ever I say something inadvertently that triggers somebody or makes them upset, and be given the ability to say, oh, that is not what I meant to do. That was not my intention whatsoever. Please accept apology or whatever it is. But then you combine that with the rage culture that we have here, where it's hair trigger. And the moment I am triggered, okay, now I got full license to unload both barrels on somebody. Yeah. And boy, oh boy, the growing pains that we are going through right now. And you're a counselor in the middle of all that.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's it's a lot to take in, just because I do have a lot of friends who are in that kind of like community who are experiencing these things. And so being a counselor, it's like there's just so many things people are dealing with, and I have the privilege of being able to get to talk to these people about these things.
Oh, what a great way to talk. What a great way to say that and look at it that way. And you do truly look at it that way. Like, Davis, you're a guy that what you see is what you get. Yeah. And you do truly look at it like a privilege.
Yeah. Oh, and I come to work every day, and I know that's a privilege for me because I know there's people who don't get to have that. Right. Yeah. So I'm very much privileged in that sense.
I think about the attributes that I would want in a counselor, and it's somebody who I would feel comfortable being able to open up with, someone who wouldn't judge me, somebody who maybe could share their life experience with me, or their point of view with me, or their insights with me. Mm-hmm. You know, if I got some blind spots, I'd love some people to shine the light on those blind spots so I can see them. Yeah. You are all of those things. Mm-hmm. I hope you know that. Like, I hope you know that's who you are. Like, and for those out there who are thinking about counseling, they've been maybe there are guys out there who are listening to this. I promise you, there are guys out there who are listening to this who have been told, hey, maybe you might want to see a counselor. Yeah. Or maybe they themselves might have thought, and I want to help those people get to that place where they get to that precipice where they are able to jump off and feel that freedom that you were talking about. Yeah. It can literally change their entire course of the rest of their life. Yeah. Yeah. Do you does that fuck with your mind sometimes when you think about it? I can actually sometimes, like that breakthrough session 6, that one there. Yes. That person is going to be on a completely different trajectory because they spent some time with you.
Yeah. And I don't think about it in the moment in time. I just do my job, and that's what it is. And then when I think about it, when they leave the room or when they leave the session, I go, that's something that they are working on, that they wanted to tell me, and they wanted to come and see me, and they thought that I looked a certain way. And, especially like reading my biography on the website and everything, it's like, that's something that people look at as well, as like, I want either a man or a woman as a counselor, or do I want somebody who like, I don't care, or somebody from the community, like from the LGBTQ plus community, like am I wanting to seek someone who is part of that community? So it's very much like what you said, like, I look for this and this and this in a counselor. Right. So there's a lot of people who want the same things as you do, but they also want that other aspect of, oh, I also want him to be, 26, and I want him to be, have that young mind aspect, and I want him to have this and this, so that also comes into question is, am I ready for counseling?
Ah, there you go. Yeah. I told you it was going to go by fast, and we're already at the place where we're going to start wrapping up. If there was one thing that you wanted to say to somebody who was maybe dealing with these types of fears, these trepidations, knowing that they got stuff that's there, not knowing what's going to happen, not knowing what it would take to kind of get rid of that hesitancy and say, okay, I want to go and talk to somebody. I want to look at counseling. What would you say to those people right now that are listening?
I would say to them, don't be afraid to shed your emotions, and being able to talk about those things that are vulnerable, because being in that safe space, within that safe space with that counselor, is going to benefit you in the long run.
How will it benefit them in the long run?
By being able to be vulnerable and having that space to talk about what they've been going through.
Mm-hmm. being able to let go of some of the things they're holding on to, being able to kind of feel like they got a clean slate.
Yeah. And being able to talk.
Yeah.
And that's something that not a lot of men that I've worked with had the privilege of doing when they were a kid, is being able to talk.
What I like to say to people too is because I'm not a counselor by any stretch, but I'm a card carrying member of counseling is good. Yeah. Talking is good. Being vulnerable is good. I've seen it, and I know what it's like to be balled up in that place and tight, holding on to things. And the word that I use when it comes to being vulnerable, and I mean, it could be on a counseling level, but the whole thing about HeChangedIt is that we're creating a place where guys can go and be vulnerable. They can be vulnerable anonymously and whatnot. That vulnerability is freedom. Yeah. It literally is freedom. And so many men out there have never experienced that freedom because they're just so tight and bound. And being that vulnerable isn't unbinding. You know? Yeah.
And once they're able to talk, like I have a client in particular right now who spoke to me saying that I could sit here for an hour and not talk because that's how I grew up, was just sitting there and not talking. And so, but now that I'm with them, they've been talking to me like they've known me my whole life, right? Or they've they're a completely different person now because they're able to just talk.
Wow. They're a completely different person now just because they can talk. Man. I appreciate your insights into this. When you saw what HeChangedIt is doing, this course that we're building is going to be a great course.
So exciting.
It's really exciting.
Yeah, I was super excited to get
it. And as we, it was funny because we had all sorts of different folks on this panel and from different walks of life and whatnot. And I remember a couple of times when people from HeChangedIt might kind of say something out there. The intrigue of what we're building here was it was really infectious, and the excitement was created and whatnot. What is it about HeChangedIt that you like so much?
Oh my goodness. I actually listened to some of the podcasts that you had done before actually coming here. And it's cool to kind of see different people's perspectives on, like men's mental health and what they're going through. And it's just cool. And I downloaded the app like a week ago. So I'm just being able to kind of see what the app is like and like all of these like things of like, I was looking at like the food recipes and everything. I was like, this is so exciting. Like I need to get to, I want to do this.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I mean, and it's funny because, you've seen behind the curtain a little bit more than most other people. Like you've seen this course, you ain't seen nothing yet. Like this is the app is like nothing compared to what the aspirations of the app are, but already there's this buzz and there's excitement about it. I can't thank you enough for being part of this HeChangedIt journey. Now, if anybody hears this podcast and they want to, they feel the same kind of thing that I felt when I first saw you, they feel that being drawn to you. What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Best way to reach out to me is to contact me through the William and Associates Counseling Services. So that's something that
is that a .com, William and Associates Counseling.com?
It's actually, so we go by WACS. So we go by WACS.ca. So you can find us on there. And if you're wanting to reach out and wanting to talk, even if it's just one session, come on in.
Awesome. Do you do your social medias public or anything like that? Or are you keeping, I'm going to keep this more professional.
Like, I'm good. Yeah. So my social media, my Instagram is Davis Wiggs _counseling. And also I go by like my personal account I have, which is DJ Wiggs, at DJ Wiggs on Instagram.
DJ Wiggs sounds like that sounds cool.
Well, it's part of my middle name. So I just kind of abbreviated it. Yeah. So it was cool. Yeah.
Are you a John as well?
No, James.
Yeah. I'm a Michael John.
Oh, nice.
I'm an MJ.
Nice. Yeah. DJ is, I've gone by DJ a couple times with a few of my friends. So might as well just go by that. But yeah, so I'm on those and I'm currently in the midst of becoming a registered counselor.
That's super cool. I hope very, very much so that when you enter that next phase and you do start to specialize and start to create your own, getting out from under the shadow of an organization. And I say that without any disparagement. I'm just really excited to watch you fly. And as you do that, I hope that you will come back and you will let us know how you are creating your own persona within the counseling world and your own practice. And I hope that you'll keep us posted. I hope that we can see you in the app as well, and we can figure out ways and tools to do that. I can't thank you enough for the piece of the puzzle that you have been with He Changed It. I thank you so much for helping with this course that's coming up. I thank you for being vulnerable, being a guest today. By the way, you'd never know it's his first podcast, would you? You're just such an awesome guy, and you are a bright light in this world, Davis. Thank you very, very much for taking time to be part of this today.
Yeah, no, and thank you for letting me be here and being part of my first podcast. It was nervous in the beginning, but I feel so comfortable in this space, and we know each other from doing the communications course, and so now that I'm able to do this podcast, it's able to talk about these things, and it's so awesome being able to just be here in your presence and having that conversation with you about just certain topics that I would never thought I would have with someone. So it's great.
My man. Yeah. Well, the vulnerability is amazing, and I appreciate it so much. And that's what happens. They go by that fast. That's another episode of heCast. Again, reach out to Davis if you want to check out what it is that he does in his, counseling is one of those things where you figure out a personal attachment and you move towards that. I certainly felt that with Davis from the moment I met him, and you all can see why. Really grateful for the conversations that we have. I'm going to end the podcast the way that I began it. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. Please share, download the app, check out the He Changed It movement. We are a mental performance app, mental wellness app for men that is going to change the world. We're going to take back that phrase man up and turn it into something beautiful compared to what it has been in the past. This has been another episode of heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. My name is Mike Chisholm. Go change something.